I mean, a 35-year-old rapper and structural engineer just completely obliterated a 30-year-old political establishment overnight.
Yeah, it's wild.
It is an electoral earthquake of unprecedented proportions. But as the dust settles, his prize for winning is inheriting a country facing a massive global oil shock and an absolute existential crisis for his millions of overseas workers.
Right, like, you win the historic mandate, but your immediate reward is having to steer a ship that's taking on water from global storms entirely outside of your control.
Exactly.
The margin for error isn't just small, it's practically non-existent.
Well, welcome to the Deep Dive here on the Nepali Diaspora Network podcast. We are your source for news, views, and insight for Nepal's pride. And today, we are unpacking a stack of sources that are honestly just gripping.
They really are.
We're diving into the latest Week 11 edition of the Nepali Diaspora Digest. So this covers March 7th through the 13th, 2026. Whether you're part of the global Nepalese diaspora or someone tracking South Asian geopolitics, or you're just joining us because you're a learner, fascinated by how rapidly a society can shift under pressure, this is an analysis you need to hear.
Absolutely. There's a lot to get through.
So let's unpack this. I'm looking at this political landscape, and the old guard is just, well, they're gone. Help me understand the actual magnitude of these election numbers.
Well, to understand the magnitude, you have to look at how Nepal's electoral system is actually designed.
Okay.
Under the 2015 constitution, Nepal uses a mixed-member proportional representation system, and the entire point of that system was to make it mathematically, incredibly difficult for any single party to dominate.
Right, to force them to share power.
Exactly, forcing coalition governments to ensure diverse representation. But the Rastriya Swatantra Party, or RSP, just shattered that math. A party founded just 4 years ago won 182 out of 275 seats in the House of Representatives.
Wait, 182?
Yeah, 182. That breaks down to 125 first-past-the-post seats and 57 proportional seats.
So they didn't just win a majority. They bypassed the need for a coalition entirely.
Completely bypassed it. They secured a two-thirds supermajority. It is the very first time any party has achieved a single-party supermajority under this constitution.
That is insane.
And on the flip side, the historical titans of Nepalese politics collapsed. The Nepali Congress took its worst result ever. They're holding on to just 38 seats.
Oh, wow.
And the CPN-UML fared even worse, dropping to just 25 seats. I mean, for 3 decades, Nepalese politics has been defined by a rotating cast of the exact same leaders trading the premiership back and forth.
Yeah, the sources said Nepal's had 14 governments and 9 prime ministers since 2008 alone.
Right. And overnight, that entire architecture has been swept into the history books.
And the architect of this sweep is the Prime-Minister-designate Balendra Shah, who is universally known as Balen. And his resume doesn't look like anything we typically associate with the head of state.
Not at all.
He's 35 years old. He has a master's in structural engineering. He's a hip-hop artist with massive hits like Sadak Balak that have racked up millions of views.
Yeah, that's a classic.
And of course, he built his political reputation as the fiercely independent mayor of Kathmandu, known for, quite literally bringing in bulldozers to clean up the city's infrastructure.
What's really fascinating here is the cultural milestone his premiership represents. Because Balen is set to become the first Madheshi prime minister in Nepal's history.
Right.
The Madheshi community, which is primarily from the Terai, or the southern plains of Nepal, has historically been deeply marginalized and locked out of the highest echelons of power in Kathmandu. So a 35-year-old breaking that historical ceiling is a monumental shift in national identity.
And the specific race that really stood out in these sources was his individual contest. Balen went up against political titan K.P. Sharma Oli in Oli's own traditional stronghold of Japa 5.
Yeah, that was huge.
He didn't just edge him out. The final tally was 68,348 votes to 18,734.
A landslide.
I've been trying to wrap my head around this, and it feels like a scrappy indie startup completely bankrupting a 30-year-old legacy monopoly in a single fiscal quarter.
That's a great way to put it.
But I do have to push back a little on the sheer optimism of this moment. Yes, they have this massive mandate. And yes, party leader Rabi Lamshane reported that his total election spending was barely under $1 million rupees.
Which is unheard of efficiency, by the way.
Right, totally unheard of. But their caucus is largely inexperienced in federal governance. Do they actually know how to run a country, especially in a crisis?
Well, that is the vital question. And to answer it, we have to look at why they won in the first place. This victory is the direct culmination of the September 2025 Gen Z protests.
Ah, right, the youth protests.
Yeah, the youth took to the streets demanding an end to systemic corruption and demanding basic transparency. And they channeled that raw street fury directly into the ballot box.
Which is pretty rare, actually. Usually street protests fizzle out.
Exactly. But for the Nepalese diaspora, who have been demanding good governance from afar for years, this is the most significant shift in a generation. But, your skepticism is warranted.
Because it's easy to protest, but hard to govern.
Campaigning on reform is fundamentally different from managing the levers of a state apparatus, especially when the state is facing an external emergency.
Which is exactly the terrifying reality they are walking into. You have a 35-year-old structural engineer with a supermajority who has clearly figured out how to win elections.
Yeah.
But the immediate question is, does he know how to navigate the geopolitics of the Middle East?
Yeah.
Because right now, the global economy is seizing up, and Nepal's lifeline is trapped in a literal war zone.
The U.S.-Iran-Israel conflict, Operation Epic Fury, is entering its second week now. And the implications for Nepal are just chillin'. We are talking about 1.7 million Nepalese workers currently stationed in the Gulf states.
1.5 million.
1.7 million, yeah, entirely caught in the crossfire of this escalating conflict.
And the human cost is already materializing. The sources note that one Nepalese worker, a 29-year-old from Gorkha, was killed in an Abu Dhabi airport drone strike, and 15 others were injured in Dubai.
It's awful. And beyond the direct physical threat to those workers, there is a massive logistical nightmare playing out in the skies. The airspace disruptions are practically severing the physical connection between Nepal and its diaspora.
The aviation crisis is brutal. Kathmandu's international flights dropped 65% practically overnight.
65%.
Yeah, which is costing the country over 21 million rupees daily in losses. And Dubai International Airport, which is the massive transit hub for these workers, is closing entirely from March 16th to the 28th to repair strike damage.
It's a total bottleneck.
I want you to put yourself in this position for a second. Imagine knowing that 41% of your country's economic lifeline, the remittances sent back home by these overseas workers, comes directly from an active conflict zone.
It's terrible.
But here is where I'm a bit confused. The government launched an emergency registration portal, and already 100,000 workers have urgently entered their details. Yet the foreign minister has stated that the situation, quote, does not warrant immediate mass evacuation.
Right.
With 100,000 people rushing to a portal, isn't the government vastly underestimating the panic on the ground?
It's not that they are underestimating the panic, it's that they are trapped in a profound economic paradox. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs, MOFA, is scrambling behind the scenes.
So they are doing something.
Oh, definitely. They are looking at Saudi Arabia as an alternative transit route to get people out, and Qatar Airways is trying to schedule 143 relief flights.
Okay, that's something.
But the reluctance to call for a mass evacuation is tied directly to the underlying mechanics of Nepal's economy. Remittances fund nearly 29% of Nepal's entire GDP.
So almost a third of the national economy is resting on the shoulders of the very people trapped under these airspace closures.
Precisely. If you order a mass evacuation of 1.7 million people, the logistical reality of moving them with closed airports is nearly impossible.
Right, you literally can't fly them out.
But even if you could, you would instantly freeze the economic lifeblood of the country. Furthermore, the domestic economy has zero capacity to absorb 1.7 million returning workers.
Where would they work?
Exactly. It is an existential crisis for the incoming government. How do you protect your citizens' lives without completely collapsing the economy that feeds their families back home?
Wow. And you don't even have to be in the Gulf to feel the blast radius of this conflict. The shockwaves of those bombs are literally changing how Nepalese families in Kathmandu cook their dinner tonight.
The domestic economic fallout is hitting incredibly fast. The global supply chain relies heavily on the Strait of Hormuz, and because of the conflict, tanker traffic through the strait has dropped to a trickle.
Yeah, the sources mentioned the International Energy Agency noted it wiped out more oil supply than any crisis in history.
And that bottleneck caused Brent crude to spike to $115 a barrel?
But help me connect the dots here. Why does a global crude spike hit Nepal so immediately and so hard?
Because Nepal is 100% dependent on India for its refined fuel. And India, in turn, gets over 80% of its crude oil from the Middle East. It's a rapid cascade effect.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
Furthermore, Nepal uses its precious foreign currency reserves earned primarily through those worker remittances we just talked about, to buy that fuel from India.
Oh, man. And the visual of this crisis on the ground is striking. We aren't just talking about abstract numbers on a trading floor. Nepal Oil Corporation is currently rationing cooking gas.
Yeah, rationing it.
They're literally selling half-filled 7.1 kilogram LPG cylinders for 955 rupees. They are doing this to stop consumer hoarding, but it's a stark indicator of the panic setting in at the household level.
Which leads right into the fiscal straitjacket that the National Planning Commission just strapped onto Balen Shah before he even takes his oath of office.
We're at the budget cuts.
Anticipating this massive economic hit, the NPC proactively cut the upcoming national budget ceiling by 4%, bringing it down to 1.89 trillion rupees. They also proposed slashing pork barrel projects under 30 million rupees.
It's like RSP just won the ultimate home makeover show, right? But the prize money was just slashed by 4%, the supply chains bringing the building materials are permanently blocked, and the kitchen in the house is completely out of gas.
That's exactly what it feels like.
How can a party that campaigned so heavily on transformative infrastructure development and sweeping changes actually deliver when the national wallet is shrinking and basic energy is being rationed?
Economists call this the dual shock scenario, and it is materializing all at once. You have a simultaneous energy price surge cascading through an entirely import-dependent economy, right at the exact moment that the remittance pipeline, the very money used to pay for those expensive imports, is threatened by war.
It's a perfect storm.
The new government doesn't just need good policies, they need a lifeline.
So the new government is paralyzed by a shrinking wallet and a global war. But here is where it gets really interesting. The citizens of Nepal aren't sitting around waiting for the politicians to figure it out.
No, they're not.
They are taking matters into their own hands right now to force broken institutions to work.
The societal shift we saw at the ballot box is happening on the streets too. The era of passive acceptance is completely over.
We see this vividly in the deeply tragic case of Anisa BK in Surkhet. Anisa was a 16-year-old grade 11 science student. She left for 2 mission classes and was later found dead in a community forest.
It's just so sad.
And the postmortem confirmed she was killed following a violent sexual assault.
It is a heartbreaking, horrific crime, and the public reaction has been fierce, unwavering, and highly strategic.
Her family made an incredible stand. They refused to receive her body at Karnali Provincial Hospital for 5 days.
The whole days.
And in South Asian culture, where funeral rites are deeply important and culturally urgent, delaying them is a massive form of protest. They demanded justice before they would lay her to rest.
And that act of defiance sparked protests nationwide. Students in Karnali province, in Dang, in Kathmandu, all demanding stricter rape laws and systemic protection for women and girls.
We have to contextualize why this anger is so deep. The sources point out a grim statistic. 33% of Nepalese women aged 20 to 24 were married before the age of 18.
It's a staggering number.
It really is. This isn't just a reaction to a singular tragedy, though the grief for Anisa is profound. It's a reaction to a system that routinely fails to protect its most vulnerable citizens.
The demand isn't just for arrests in this one case. It's the demand for an entirely new baseline of safety and justice.
And we see that same underlying theme of demanding a functioning system in a very different context. The domestic football strike.
Yeah, a completely different scenario, but the exact same underlying mechanism of protest.
The A-Division Football League in Nepal had been suspended for over 1,000 days.
1,000 days.
Think about that. 1,000 days without domestic professional football. The players finally had enough. They literally went to the All Nepal Football Association headquarters, ANFA, and padlocked the building.
They physically shut down the governing body because the old ways of appealing to authority clearly weren't working.
And it worked. ANFA condemned it, called it anarchic, but 2 days later, they completely capitulated to all the demands.
Really? Just 2 days?
Yeah. They agreed to fund the welfare account, release the withheld prize money, and the league is officially returning on April 13th.
That's incredible.
Whether it's the heartbreaking demand for justice for Anisa or athletes demanding their basic livelihood so they can play football, the pattern is identical. The people are physically forcing a broken system's hand.
If we connect this to the broader cultural moment, it's that same Gen Z energy. The youth who ousted the political establishment at the ballot box and elected a 35-year-old prime minister are now in the streets, at the hospitals, and at the sports headquarters, demanding functional institutions across the board.
Right. They just want things to work.
They're demanding that things actually work.
And that insistence on self-reliance, on not waiting for a broken system to save you, is exactly what we are seeing in the global diaspora network as well.
It's important to recognize that while the Gulf is the epicenter of the current geopolitical crisis, vulnerability and exploitation exist everywhere, and the diaspora is having to adapt.
Yes, the newsletter detailed the rescue of 21 Nepalese citizens from Cambodia.
Oh, the scam centers.
Yeah, they've been lured by organized criminal gangs who promised lucrative jobs, but instead they were trafficked and forced to work in illegal online scam centers and casinos in Bave, near the Vietnamese border.
It's terrifying how common that's becoming.
Thankfully, they were repatriated. And this was coordinated not just by the Nepal Embassy in Bangkok, but heavily supported by the Non-Resident Nepali Association, the NRNA chapter in Cambodia. It's a stark reminder that exploitation isn't limited to the Middle East.
Human trafficking networks are highly adaptive, and the desperation for overseas employment makes workers incredibly vulnerable across Southeast Asia. The fact that diaspora community networks had to step in alongside official embassies shows how vital these grassroots connections have become.
And you can see that same self-reliance happening in communities far away from conflict zones. People aren't waiting for official help. They're building their own networks.
Very true.
For instance, the Digest highlighted a great resource for our listeners in the UK. If you are looking to connect on jobs, housing, events, or if you want to support local Nepalese-owned businesses, the community has built a classified platform called belayat.uk.
That's spelled BELAYAT.UK.
Exactly. It's a fantastic hub for finding those local connections. And of course, if you want to read the full newsletter we've been unpacking today and access a ton of other resources built by and for the community, make sure you visit nepalidiaspora.net.
Those community-built networks are more vital now than ever, acting as a safety net when national and global systems are under strain.
They really are. And I want to end our factual breakdown today on a high note, because amid all this heavy news, there are some incredible things happening that show what this country is capable of.
We definitely need some good news.
First, Nepal is going to participate in the Cannes Film Festival for the very first time with a dedicated stall to promote Nepalese cinema.
That is so cool. It's a huge moment for cultural representation on the global stage, showcasing Nepalese storytelling to the world.
But the one that really got me in Humla, which is Nepal's most remote district, 17,000 students received their textbooks on the very first day of school.
Wow. On day one?
Day one. That is a historic first. And I just have to say, while geopolitical crises and massive elections dominate all the headlines, delivering physical books to 17,000 kids on time, in the most remote, mountainous part of the country, that is the kind of quiet, massive victory that actually changes the future.
It is tangible proof that logistics and governance can work when the political will and effort are applied. It's a small but vital beacon of what effective administration looks like.
So let's bring this deep dive to a close. We are looking at a nation standing at an entirely unprecedented crossroads. You have a 35-year-old rapper-turned-prime minister wielding a two-thirds supermajority, backed by a population that absolutely refuses to accept the old status quo anymore.
Right.
But he is staring down a global oil shortage, a shrinking national budget, and a terrifying crisis for 1.7 million overseas workers whose remittances keep the country afloat.
The mandate is clear, but the runway to deliver on it is incredibly short, and the obstacles are truly global in scale. The next few months will test whether this new political energy can actually translate into crisis management.
Which leaves us with a final, lingering thought for you to ponder long after this audio stops playing. We've talked extensively about this massive youth movement.
Yeah.
But what happens to a nation's identity when its most vocal, reform-minded generation, the Gen Z voters who just reshaped the entire government structure, are simultaneously the exact same demographic most likely to leave the country as migrant workers?
It's a heavy question.
Can a country truly rebuild its domestic future when its economy fundamentally relies on the mass export of its own youth?
It is the central defining paradox of modern Nepal.
It really is. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We will catch you on the next one.